Today we're here in Atlanta, Georgia at the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, and we're here at the Delta Airlines Museum. We're going to take a look at some planes and some artifacts and some memorabilia from the history of Delta. We're also going to take a look at some inside some planes and things like that, so let's go see what we can get into. So we first walk in here, the hangar. It has some of the prop-driven airplanes that Delta has used over the years. And this placard here tells you about props in the history of the hangar we're in. The hangar was actually built in 1941. Pause and read it there if you'd like. Here's an example of a prop-driven airplane motor. And here they have a little exhibit that shows you how it works. See how each piston works its way around the cylinders to make the propeller spin. On a radial engine. This little exhibit here shows you the controls of a plane, how you make it turn, go back and forth and spin around. The basic controls of an airplane: the yaw, pitch, and roll that Tori is demonstrating for us today. And right above it is a old crop dusting plane replica from 1941 or 1949, I believe. Pretty interesting. And right below that is another Delta airplane. It's prop driven. This is the Curtiss Wright 6B sedan. Manufactured in 1931. Now this is a flight simulator from 1941 as well. Flight simulators have come a long, long way from what we know them today. This tells you a little bit more about it. And actually they do have a modern day flight simulator that you can go on here in the museum. It's a little bit extra charge, and unfortunately we're not going to get to do that today. But this wall here has some memorabilia of planes from the past. And this exhibit has memorabilia from airmail, letters from the 1920s and 30s. Some of the pilots actually carried guns back in the day. A scale that shows how they weighed the mail so they can get the proper weight for the airplanes and don't overweigh the planes or overburden the planes. Some other things here about airmail. And this part of the exhibit kind of shows off the first passenger flights, where the passengers were actually in the mail carrying airplanes. It shows some of the seats that they would have. They usually had just 2 or 3, maybe 4 seats in there for quote unquote passengers. And this exhibit has some of the communication devices they used back in the day with the pilots and air traffic controllers, I guess. Barometers and things like that. Can I help them with the weather? There's some early gauges. Pilot's book. This exhibit here talks about the DC-3 plane. Now they have one of these here, and certain days you can go in on it, take a look at it. It's actually being restored. Have a map of the seating arrangements, and this shows some of the comforts they had. There's an ashtray and some matches. Look at those matches. Coffee and Coke. And this one talks about some of the creature comforts they started getting with reserved seats, and pamphlets and brochures talking more about the planes. And here it is showing them putting a Porsche inside of one of the planes. Shows some of the newer flight attendants uniforms and bags and things like that you can get. And some more brochures. It's one thing you don't see about too many days. Brochures about airplane travel. And this one talks about the new DC-6 from 1946. It said it flew faster and carried more people. So I guess once air travel got more popular, more people wanting to ride, so they needed to get more people on the planes and get them to where they wanted to go faster, but they still were comfortable. There's a bib there from one of the plane flights. Here's some people hanging out, playing cards. And this one here talks about the luxury travel. So once people got more and more comfortable flying, they were needing some more luxury items. There's some more brochures. Kind of a cutaway cabin view of the plane. This is a cutaway of a Western Lockheed 188 prop jet from 1959. It shows some of the other luxury items that you could get or enjoy while on your flight. Here's a little photo op they got of this little Western Air Express plane. We've talked Tori into getting in it for a photo op. Well, Tori's too tall for the plane. Yeah, that's funny. And here's a little theater. It shows a little movie here. Talks more about the history of Delta. Also kind of shows the history of the Delta Sky Miles card going up the wall there. Now this is pretty interesting. This is a room full of model airplanes of various sizes and shapes and manufacturers and airline companies. There's even one here, the cutaway version. You can see the seats. I kind of wonder what these planes were actually used for. They weren't made for just this museum. Possibly they were used in corporate offices. And some of these smaller ones might have sat on people's desks. Just not sure, but still very cool to see all these different types of planes. So this is Mr. C.E. Woolman, aka known as Mr. Delta. Kind of tells you a little bit about the history of him. It says in 1925 he joined the Huff Dallin Industrious crop dusting firm based in Monroe, Louisiana. That's basically where Delta was originally started at. The name Delta came from the Mississippi Delta. That was suggested by his secretary. Wow. I've never seen any type of passenger plane of this, say, size. Now this is not a large one by any means, but I've never seen one from the ground up close like this. This is quite impressive. Very impressive. Let's tell you about the airplane we're looking at. It's a Boeing 767, cruising speed of 530 miles an hour. And from what it looks like, we might be able to go inside that here in just a little bit. Now I know out there in the parking lot, there's a 747 that we're going to take a look at here in just a little bit. But we're going to walk around the airplane here. And they have the baggage carriers that take your baggage, suitcases and such from the airport, and they load them onto the airplane. And they have some exhibits like that inside of here, which is pretty cool too. Kind of tell you about the seats and things like that. International flights. Some of the stewardess and flight attendants outfits and things like that, things you can get on the plane. And off to the side there is that flight simulator that I was talking about that you can do. Now if you remember back in 1996, the Centennial Olympics was held in Atlanta. That's where we're at today. And there's some pins and things like that from the Olympics here. And there is the actual torch that was carried. And some other pins and medals and things like that. This is the cockpit of a Convair 880. So many switches and knobs and gauges, and it's quite impressive. And this right here talks about how the flight attendant uniforms progressed over the years. And this shows some of the first class features that they had in the 1960s. There's even a can of Coke and a bottle of rum there, so you can have a rum and Coke while in flight. And the international flights started having seats that laid back so you could actually go to sleep or watch TV. Now this talks about the airport lounges and how you could go in them and wait on your flight if you're a preferred customer or first class passenger. And here it talks about the red coat assistants that would help you in the airports. And in 1981, the frequent flyer program came out. It gave people who spent a lot of money more perks. And here's some of the old school check-in computers that would print your tickets and boarding passes out. And here are some of the flight kits and flight manuals that the pilots would bring on the flights with them. And here shows some of the gauges from the 1970s, and then the gauges similar to what they use today. It's interesting how they progressed over the last 50 years from that to that. Now we're going to take a trip on a plane here. Well, make believe we're crossing into the plane from the airport. Controls there for the walkway. Take a look at the cockpit here. All the controls, knobs and switches and gauges. Shows you the flight attendants areas. Where they would make the meals and coffee and such. And this is the first class area. This is pretty neat because I've never had free roam of an airplane this size. I've never been in an airplane this size. Oh wow. So they took the seats out. And there's more displays and memorabilia. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but it shows the insulation and all the wires and cables and ducting and things you don't ever get to see on an airplane unless you're making or building the airplanes. And there's a cross-sectional view of a jet engine. Cross-sectional view of a plane, or a jet I should say. And the rest of this has all kinds of flight attendant outfits from different eras and different countries. Looks like it's from Japan.
That's a 1966
Mid-60s. Here's the Atlanta Braves, got a little bit. And then the Atlanta Falcons. Got some Delta cowboy boots. And here at the back of the plane, it shows them getting everybody's little snacks and coffee or tea. Or if you're in Atlanta, you definitely gotta have a Coke. But this is pretty darn cool. Come back around, it has some looks like toys and model airplanes. And who remembers Viewmaster? How many of y'all had a Viewmaster as a kid? I still have mine. There's like some Barbie doll type flight attendants and other model airplanes, and goes back to some of the modern day flight attendant uniforms. It's 8 decades of fashion in the skies. So it's 80 years of progression of the flight attendant outfits. And we're outside the Hangar Museum. There's a couple planes out here in the parking lot we can go tour. I believe this is the 747 we're going to take a look at. I've never been in a 747, so this will be pretty interesting. So you can definitely get up close and personal with this airplane. Giant landing gear and tires. All I can say is wow. I've never been on a plane this big. Go up here, the first class seating. Sit, felt like to sit first class. Got TVs, watch your movies. I got climate control. I got all kinds of stuff in here. Huh. You got a little footrest you want to kick back. The areas where they get the meals and such ready for you. Like I said, I've never been on a plane this big. I've been on a plane that had like 5 seats wide, but never, what we got here, 7, 9 seats wide. Yeah, this is way bigger than I've ever been on. Way bigger by far. Another area there. Get the meals and such ready. And here, wow. This is interesting. Has all the
including the flight plan, areas of possible turbulence, volcanic activity, and space weather forecasts.
other wires and such.
Our crew of highly trained flight attendants prepare for the flight as well.
Just quite impressive how large and spacious this is without everything in it. The seats and all that.
Discuss safety and security matters. Updates.
This is what's called the wing walk. We can actually walk out to where the wings are. Kind of give you a perspective of how tall or how high we are up in the air or off the ground. airplanes taking off over there at the airport.
Aircraft 6301 over to the THL pad, get ready to move to the museum tomorrow morning.
So now we're in the second story of the airplane. It has more first class seating in the cockpit. We're going to go take a look at it in a second. Watching the video downstairs, it showed how they got this plane here, and supposedly this was the first Boeing 747 that was produced for passenger flight. And towards the flight deck here shows probably the pilots and co-pilots restrooms. Step into the cockpit here. I believe this was made in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong, but I think it was the 70s when this was made. It looks like it has been retrofitted obviously since then with some of the controls and things like that, but still has all the gauges and knobs and buttons and fuses and switches and all that other good stuff. Pretty interesting. I've never been in the cabin of a 747. And also downstairs there was a video that showed how they got the plane here from the other side of the airport all the way around the airport and all that stuff into the museum area here. It's pretty interesting. Just a quick look at the Delta Airlines Museum here in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're around Atlanta, you got some free time in the layover at the airport, come by and take a look at this museum. It's pretty interesting. I think it's like $15 for adults and $10 for kids, so pretty interesting if you like aviation and aviation history. Like always, appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you next time.